Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 1988 Toyota Camry. Up front is a 2.0 liter inline 4, and down below is a 3-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Toyota Camry for one main reason. It is an incredibly clean example of the late 80s Toyota Camry. This has just under 60,000 miles on the clock. And so today, we're going to be taking a look at a beautifully preserved, well-kept example of an icon that invaded the US back in the 1980s. But if you'd like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you'd like to see all my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month. But let's get back to that 2-liter under the hood. Well, it was one of two engines available here in the Camry of this era. You might also be familiar with the 2.5-liter V6 that was available, and that was made a little bit more famous by the ES250 from Lexus because that debuted just a few years later and sort of launched the Lexus brand. So you might have heard of that before. You could get a 2.5 liter that made 153 horsepower. This 2-liter makes 115 and was the base engine here for the Camry. It's fine enough, and honestly, for a vehicle like this, a lot of mid-size family sedans back in this era were moving towards 4 cylinders. GM had their Iron Duke, and boy, we're gonna talk about GM here in a little bit, but this is a really good engine, very, very solid, and it works well. Like I said, paired to a 3-speed automatic. I don't have any notes on it. It's not awful. It's not the greatest. I, of course, would prefer the manual because you could have gotten a Camry in a manual in this era, but we're dealing with the automatic here today, and again, as I mentioned, no notes. Last but not least, of course, the Camry's front-wheel drive as it has been forever, but in the era you could find it with the All-Track, which was their all-wheel drive system. Again, not what we have in front of us today, but an option of the era. How does it feel to drive the 1988 Toyota Camry? It's great. It is fantastic. It's lovely. Are the driving dynamics really blowing me away of how flat it can corner or how fast it can accelerate? No, that's not the point of the Camry. But comparing it to the American vehicles of the time, there's no rattles, there's no squeaks, there's no floppiness. It actually feels like a well-built car. And so the driving experience in that regard is way better than anything America was making at the time. Again, we'll dive into this more later, but it's cool, it's calm, it's collected. And I don't think the Camry gets enough credit because the Camry is just known as this like simple, reliable, great to drive car that no one ever really talks about that. It's just this like well-known fact, like gravity or the seasons changing. It's just, it happens, and it is what it is. And so I want to give the Camry its flowers here today. Not only is it head and shoulders above American-made cars, but it was knees and toes above American-made cars, and you figure that out very quickly by only driving the Camry for a few minutes. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have 3 gauges. Coolant temperature to the left, fuel next to that, speedometer on the right. That's it. That's all she wrote. That's all she needed. To the left of the gauge cluster, we have a defrost, and off to the right, we have our hazard switch. On the steering wheel, we do get a Camry badge, but this was pre-airbag, so unfortunately no airbags. And moving off to the left of the wheel, we do have our climate control vent, gauge dimmer switch, and a little coin holder. Moving on to the door, we have the latch to get in and out, a big grab handle, and I also love this fabric found on the door. And then, of course, we get our crank windows. Moving into the center, we do get a digital clock. We get 2 more climate control vents, and our climate controls themselves down below. Fan speed, where to send it. The AC is not really working great here today, but that's okay. It's not too hot. And we do have cruise control buttons off to the left. So very nice to see that. Even though we have crank windows, we still got cruise control. We have the factory radio down below with a cassette player, AM and FM tune and scan. I love all of this. Very, very 80s. And the owner even has a couple of period cassette tapes, which is always cool to see. We do get our cigarette lighter and ashtray, and we do have a cubby, but you can pull out this little tab that's actually tiny little cup holders. And so we can do a big friggin' bottle test here in the 88 Camry, and of course it fails, but nice that it had some type of option at all. Then we have the shifter in the center. Absolutely love the shifter. Very tall, you have overdrive on it. Very blue, as is the rest of this interior. Of course, also love the rest of this interior. It's great, and it does the job. We have our parking brake, and then we have a couple interesting features. So we do have the lift for emergency exit. As you'll notice, this has the power seat belt. So in the late 80s and early 90s, the American government was deciding to mandate one of two things. You either needed passive restraints, meaning seat belts that you didn't have to physically put on, so the idea would be that everyone would have them on all the time, or you had to have airbags. Now, we know that airbags won that battle, much like VHS tapes and Betamax. But in this era, this car, instead of getting airbags, they did the passive restraints. And so this latch right here would basically open them up in case of emergency you had to get out immediately. Then to the right, we have our normal and power modes for the transmission and a little light that says push down belt release lever. Then we'll talk about the seats. The seats are a lighter blue. However, the rest of the interior is a little bit darker blue, but it's all blue, so it all makes sense. They are very, very comfortable. I fit in them. I have good headroom, knee room, leg room, and operational room. I am very comfortable in the front of the Toyota Camry from 1988, and I'm very appreciative of that. And these seats look great, too. I think they've aged incredibly gracefully. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. All right, let's get into the back of the 88 Camry, and just even the door, so solid, so well built. Getting into the back seat here. And of course, right off the bat, we do have our cranks for the windows. That's going to be pretty typical of the era. Decent amount of space, but we don't get any center console or anything like that. Nothing really crazy. I guess we have a light up here. That's kind of nice, but that solid, satisfying click. Absolutely love that. I love just looking over here. The fabric is so nostalgic. It's really, really great. Down here, we do have an ashtray, so it's still the 80s in some form or another. And overall, this is a great place to be. It's not huge. I guess the American cars might have the back seats a little bit better, you know, the packaging of it, but I think that's the only leg up that any of the American cars had. This was a little bit before the Camry got super, super popular. The next generation was like all over every single road in the United States, and so maybe not a whole lot of people here in the US have memories from the backseat of this generation of Camry, but it's just so great. It's so nice, everything. I just love the blue. I'm starting to jumble my words. I'm so happy and excited with the back of this vehicle. So very, very cool. And that's your look at the back seats of a 1988 Toyota Camry. Let's hop into the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. All right, coming around the back of the 88 Camry, same key as the ignition. And there you go. The owner does have some artifacts from the era as well. Some awesome cassettes. I'm sure many of you have listened to a bunch of these. Absolutely love it. I'd probably pick Ozzy Osbourne's Bark at the Moon. I think that would really fit the vibe here today. Maybe driving at night more so. But some more cassettes over here. We have a Chilton manual, something that I don't even think they make anymore. Oh yeah, we're right by the airport too, so a bunch of planes coming in. And then we have the 1988 and a half Toyota Camry booklet in here. Absolutely love all of this. So plenty of trunk space, definitely on par with everything else being made in the 80s. Everything of this era had giant, giant trunks, especially in the 70s, but into the 80s as well. So you get that here. So on par and 2 thumbs up. I'm up here. Nice and easy. There you go. Now we gotta talk about the looks. And I don't like overly love the Camry. I don't think it's like this styling masterpiece. I don't think they'll be teaching this in many art degree classes. However, it is extremely subtle. It is extremely nonchalant. And I like that about it. It's not bragging to you. You know, I think of any car of the 80s, this had the rights to brag to you. It did everything the American sedans wanted to do, but just better. And so it could have been crazy looking, but that wasn't the ethos of the Camry. And it's honestly not the ethos of the Japanese people. It's a very subtle culture. It's not a very braggiose culture. And so you see that and feel that in the design of the Camry. It's white, it's basic. Most people would never ever look at this car twice in a parking lot. And yet under the hood and the design and the inner workings are something to be proud of. You just wouldn't know it from the headlights and taillights. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving the 1988 Toyota Camry? Well, it's been nothing but green lights. I truly have nothing bad to say about this vehicle. I have a lot to say bad about American cars, and we'll get to that in a second. But honestly, like, Toyota came to the States only like 2 decades before this car, and they just hit it out of the park pretty much from day one. And I think this late 80s is when they really started to get that ball rolling. I kept alluding to it. I recently drove a bunch of Chevy Celebrities, the A-body vehicle, and that, I would say, is a pretty direct competitor to this vehicle. Both were available with V6s and inline-4s. Both were kind of family sedans, but not the giant flagship sedans. There was still the Avalon that was bigger than this vehicle. And with the Chevy Celebrities, they had like the Impala that was bigger, the Malibu. This car is just infinitely better built than any American car of the 1980s. Now, us in America, we were struggling in the 1980s with the fuel crisis, oil crisis in the 1970s. Harsh restrictions came down and killed our lovely V8s, our big displacement V6s, all in turn for smaller engines. And we hadn't really built that many small engines before the 80s. And so they were very clangy, very tinny, weren't very reliable, just no good. As much as I love the name of the Iron Duke, the 2.5 liter from GM, it's not a good motor. It's not a well-balanced motor. It's not a very reliable motor. It just kind of works, I guess. Japan, after World War II, was pretty much decimated, and so they have always had expensive gas and oil. They have always had limited resources, and ever since post-war, they've been making small, fuel-efficient vehicles. They have a 30 to 40-year jump on us Americans by making these little reliable 4-cylinders, and you see that here. This car brought to the table in 1988 over 40 years of experience building small engines where Americans were just starting to dip their toe in. Toyota was well acquainted with it, and so that's why they were able to bring out these amazing, amazing 4-cylinders that we still talk about even here today. And so with all of that expertise coming to the table, the American vehicles just didn't stand a chance. People still had their American loyalties. You know, their dad was a Buick man, so they bought the Buick Century. Or, you know, their parents worked at AC Delco, or they lived in Warren, Michigan. So everyone in their family drove a GM. There were still those very, very intense loyalties to GM in the 80s. And I think that's a big reason why they sold as many cars as they did. But the writing was on the wall, and that writing said Camry. Really, the writing said Toyota, and it would only be a few more years before the Camry was the best-selling vehicle in the United States. And it would still be the best-selling vehicle in the United States if Toyota didn't also invent the RAV4. So Toyota stays on top. But that's it. This car is so much better than any of the domestics we were getting. It's smoother. It's better built. I think it's styled just as well, if not a little better. And so this was the precursor, the genesis, the prologue to the world domination that Toyota would soon accomplish. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Connor for letting me borrow his Camry for today's video. Connor's been absolutely wonderful to work with. I am so thrilled that he let me borrow this. He is preserving this vehicle in such a wonderful manner. He's been great, and I hope to work with him again in the future. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.